Hi there, welcome back to Rent Prep for Landlords. I'm Andrew Schultz, Community Manager here at Rent Prep. I'm also a licensed real estate broker with over 14 years of experience in the property management and rental property industries. On today's episode, winter's coming. If you live in a cold weather climate like me, chances are you're already starting to see the leaves change color and fall to the ground, which means that snowfall's not too far behind that. So today we're talking about all sorts of tips and tricks to help you prepare your home and your rental properties for the winter season. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's get to it. The first thing I wanted to talk about is having your home's heating system serviced. This means more than just swapping out the furnace filter and calling it a day, which is what a lot of landlords seem to do. I recommend having a professional HVAC technician come in to check over the furnace both inside and out, clean it up, and check for any issues that you may not know about, as well as any potential problems that may arise during the current heating season. Sometimes a problem with a furnace will be super obvious, like a failing blower motor that's really starting to scream loudly because the bearings are going in it, and other things such as a cracked heat exchanger can't be seen nearly as easily. And a cracked heat exchanger will dump carbon monoxide into the air that it's pushing into the home, which can obviously kill anyone that's living inside. We've caught cracked heat exchangers before when we do our clean and check service before the heating season begins. And that's why this is now a mandatory service for our property management clients. We actually have an HVAC company that comes out and services the furnaces and the boiler units in every home that we manage, just as a matter of course at the start of the season, to make sure that we're knocking out all of those little potential issues that might arise before they have an opportunity to pop up in the middle of the night when someone winds up without heat. Now, while you're servicing the furnace, this is a great time to check all of your smoke and CO detectors to ensure that they work, that they have fresh batteries, and that they're within their operational date. Don't forget that smoke and CO detectors do need to be replaced over time as the sensors become less sensitive as the batteries wear down and as the unit gets older. You should find a sticker on the back of most any smoke or CO detector unit that will tell you when it needs to be replaced or when it was manufactured. First Alert, which is a company that manufactures smoke alarms and CO detectors, recommends a guideline of replacing smoke detectors every 10 years and replacing CO detectors every 5 to 7 years from the date of manufacture. It's also a good idea to have your chimney checked on a yearly basis as well to ensure that there are no obstructions so that the exhaust gases that are coming out of your furnaces and your boiler units can properly vent up and out of the home. If your home isn't equipped with a chimney cap, you might want to see if your chimney sweep can install one while they're doing the chimney sweep service, which will prevent anything from getting in or falling down the chimney down the road. We've definitely seen all sorts of stuff in chimneys around our properties over the course of the years. We found birds' nests, we found walnuts, we found a tennis ball once. The tennis ball actually still kind of baffles us. We found it at the base of the chimney, essentially where the furnace flues connect into the chimney. It was kind of sitting at the base of the chimney there. But regardless, any obstruction inside of a chimney is a bad obstruction and needs to be removed. So it's definitely a good idea to have your chimneys checked at least once a year and ensure that you have some sort of a cap on there as well to prevent anything from falling down inside of it. Next, let's move on to the outside of your property and start talking about the roof line. Snow and ice buildup are especially tough on roofing. It's really a nasty issue here in Western New York with things like ice damming and things of that nature. And now before the snow starts to fall is a good time to think about what this is going to mean for your roof line come wintertime. If you have any loose or missing shingles, now is a great time to get those replaced and make sure that you have your roof system all patched in so that you have a complete roof with no way for water to basically infiltrate past that roof line. As snow and ice melt, that water is going to be looking for any possible avenue into a structure, so having that complete roof system goes a long way in preventing that water from finding any sort of an access point where it can get through the roof and down into your property or into your attic. If you know you have some spots that like to ice up every year, you may want to consider some more aggressive measures to prevent that ice buildup from happening. Something like a de-icing cable or a de-icing pad that can be installed along the eaves may be what you need in some instances. In other instances, you may be able to toss the larger pucks of rock salt. You can buy them at Home Depot. It's called Roof Melt, I believe, and it literally looks like a hockey puck of rock salt. You just throw them up onto the roof, and what it does is it helps to break down any snow or ice that build up that's already up on the roof so that you can try to clear any sort of ice dam or anything like that. Now, we've also had some spots that we have taken to installing what we call the ice stocking. And essentially what that is an old stocking filled with rock salt that we tie off and throw into a gutter such that any sort of snow or water that's coming down into that gutter never has an opportunity to freeze. Essentially, it's hitting that salt, dissolving a little bit of the salt, which is lowering the freezing point of that water and preventing it from freezing at the roof line. This also helps prevent a lot of ice dams and things of that nature. The one thing with this is, depending on how much snow you get, you may have to go up on the roof at some point to add more rock salt into the stocking, or you may find that, one stocking once a year does everything that you need it to do. Might be a good idea to take the two-prong approach and go with stuffing the gutter with the stocking and then also having the larger pucks available in the event that you do wind up with some buildup so that you could stand at ground level and just kind of toss those up onto the roof. Okay, so while we're still outside, let's get off the ladder and have a look around. Most homes have some sort of an outdoor water spigot, and this is a very, very common place for freeze damage to occur during the winter months as the cold temperatures freeze the water in the spigot, which then causes it to burst and create a flood. Now, if you have an outdoor hose spout, be sure to remove any hoses that are attached, obviously drain those hoses so that they don't freeze up solid, then shut the water off from inside the home if you have that shutoff in place. If you don't have a shutoff in place for your outside spout, I strongly recommend having one added. I know that they make frost-free fixtures and whatnot, but we've seen those things break too. It definitely can't freeze if there's no water in it, is basically what I'm saying. So give that some consideration. If you don't have a shutoff valve inside the house and you don't want to install one, there are several different options out there in terms of covers that can be used and things of that nature. Just make sure that there are no air gaps around it, because any sort of an air gap, anywhere that cold air can find a way into the spout and cause it to freeze, it's going to, and you're going to wind up with a very, very expensive plumbing bill. Now, while we're walking around the outside of the property, and since we just mentioned it, this is a great opportunity to look for any sort of gaps or holes around the exterior of your property. Keep in mind that it's not just snow and cold air that we're fighting against here. That's the main thing, but it's not the only thing. We also want to keep out any critters that are trying to find their way in, looking for a warm place to crash rent-free for the winter. So check around the outside of your home and look for any sort of gaps that need to be filled. Keep in mind that mortar deteriorates over time, so checking the foundation walls is just as important as walking around and looking at the remaining portions of the walls. Maybe you had a cable line that was removed at some point earlier this summer and never had the siding repaired, or didn't backfill the hole with a little silicone, something like that. Any of those areas are areas where cold air can find its way in, snow can find its way in, or vermin can try to find their way in, and you would be surprised at how little space they need to squeeze through. So definitely make sure that you're walking around, checking for any sorts of air gaps or holes, and making sure that you get those patched up before the cold weather hits. Now, if your home has a crawl space, this can be critically important to you, especially if you have any pipes that run through that same crawl space. Getting your crawl space closed up is going to make the home much, much more energy efficient during the winter months, as well as help keep the floor warmer for whoever's walking around on top of it. This is one area where you really want to ensure that you have no gaps whatsoever. If you have any vents around the outside of the crawl space, you're also going to want to make sure that you get those closed up as well. And I had mentioned pipes a bit ago. If you have any pipes in your crawl space, now is the time to make sure that they are insulated and covered from one end to the other end with some sort of a pipe wrap insulation. We've seen instances where just a 1/4 inch of exposed pipe on an otherwise completely wrapped line led to a freeze and break scenario. So you really want to make sure that you are covering end-to-end that pipe as much as possible to make sure that you are preventing any sort of cold air from getting to that pipe and potentially causing it to freeze. If you have a pipe that still manages to freeze up, there are heated pipe tapes and things like that on the market that you can secure to the tape. And essentially what you do is strap that to the pipe, plug it in, and it's going to keep the exterior of the pipe warm to essentially prevent that pipe from freezing up. Personally, I don't like the heat tape. I would prefer to insulate the pipe wherever possible to resolve the issue, but there are some instances where you will need the heat tape, and there are some instances where you may very well need both. Just make sure that whatever pipe insulation you're using is compatible with the heat tape so that you're not causing some sort of a melting situation or a potential fire. Now, let's head back inside and warm up a little bit while we check the weather stripping on all of our doors and windows to ensure that they are airtight. If a window or a door doesn't sit properly in its frame, it's not going to seal properly. So ensuring that windows and doors open and close and lock properly is going to be step one. Locks on doors and windows help them to seat properly against the seals and prevent cold air from finding its way in. So in some instances, you may find that you have a weather seal that is either very deteriorated or even non-existent in some of the older windows out there. And the nice thing is that you can pick up a variety of different window seal options of all different shapes and sizes from your preferred home improvement store. And this is all pretty much very, very easy stuff to install. You can absolutely DIY this when it comes to installing weather stripping around windows and doors. It's definitely something that's well within the wheelhouse for most people. It's basically a piece of double-sided tape that you just stick, pull the adhesive off, stick it where you need it to stick, and you've got a new door seal or a new window seal. Now, there are also window shrink wrap kits out there that we see used quite a bit. We see a lot of our tenants like to use those. Personally, I'm not sure how effective they are, but they are inexpensive, so it might be something that's worth a shot if you have a situation where you have a particularly drafty window. Something else that's worth mentioning is that if you have a window or a door that is super, super drafty, it may be because they never backfilled the gaps behind the trim with any sort of insulation or spray foam or anything of that nature. So depending on how much air you're feeling move through around a window or around a door, it may be time to pull that trim and just make sure that everything was insulated and installed properly when the work was done originally. Getting your home and rental properties prepared for the winter months can pay huge dividends in terms of energy savings, but the biggest return on investment here is the preventative maintenance of not having snow and cold damage your property from the start. So there you have it. Winter's already challenging enough, and there's no reason to add extra stress to the season with bad preventative maintenance. Do you spend some time getting your properties ready for the winter? Are you looking forward to the upcoming cold weather? Drop us a comment down below and tell us your craziest winter landlording story. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Andrew Schultz with rentprep.com, and we'll talk to you soon.